Have you ever wondered how small to medium-sized non-profits could leverage technology, specifically the power of AI, to amplify their mission? Well, today I'm diving into a critical yet often overlooked aspect of artificial intelligence, the potential to revolutionise the non-profit sector. Despite the dominance of AI in large enterprises, smaller organisations often lack the resources to fully capitalise on some of these technologies. So today I've invited Tammy Hammond onto the podcast. She's the Chief Product Officer at Bloomerang, and she's going to be sharing her optimism about the transformative role of Gen AI for non-profits, and also discuss the incredible opportunities out there to save time, create more compelling content, and ultimately enhance donor and volunteer engagement, all while addressing challenges of AI adoption in this sector. We're currently producing something like 30 to 35 episodes every single month, reaching around about 130 to 140,000 listeners around the world. So I wanted to mention the sponsor of Tech Talks Daily and also shine a light on how legacy managed file transfer tools are dated and lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. And companies that continue relying on that outdated technology put their sensitive data at risk. But the good news is you can ensure top-tier security with Kiteworks MFT suite. Their software security hardening includes an ongoing bounty program, regular penetration testing to minimize vulnerabilities, the convenience of a one-click appliance update, and avoid the hassle of managing multiple unhardened servers. And remember, Kiteworks is also FedRAMP moderate authorized. So step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks by visiting kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. But enough rambling from me. Let's get today's guest on. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Atlanta, Georgia, where Tammy's waiting to join me today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Tammy. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, hey, Neil. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Tammy Hammond. I am the Chief Product Officer at Bloomerang. We serve nonprofits with a giving platform, which for us is how we define that is both donor management, volunteer management, and fundraising.
Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. And every single day on here, I try and demystify the world of technology or the real world impacts it can have on businesses, and also get people thinking differently about areas that you maybe don't associate with technology and how it is being impacted. And if we take artificial intelligence or generative AI, it's all everyone's talking about at the moment. But I'd love to shine a light on how generative AI can specifically benefit small to medium-sized non-profits. And I know this is a subject very close to your heart. So is there anything you can share around that just to set the scene for our conversation today?
Yeah, I'm super excited about all of the opportunity to help nonprofits do more good in the world. And however they define their mission, there's so much opportunity for AI, both traditional predictive AI and generative AI, that have just, there's so many different use cases that we can talk through where it can really help them not only to raise more money for their organization, but raise more awareness, like book more volunteers. There's just so many use cases that we're working on, and we're actually about to launch our some first to market generative AI functionality that's super excited about all the things where positive impact can happen.
And for anyone listening that wants to look beyond that AI buzzword status, just to bring it to life, are there any early successes or notable measurable improvements that you've observed in nonprofits that are using generative AI to enhance their operations? Anything that you've seen now that's particularly exciting?
Well, I would tell you that generative AI, really AI in general, but especially generative AI, is very early. Nonprofits are typically not early adopters of technology. We're seeing a little bit in the very large nonprofits. In small and medium, they tend to be a little bit hesitant with technology. And so the approach we're taking is we're really embedding the generative AI technology into their everyday use cases where the product is already helping them. It's just basically empowering them to do it faster with better results. So some of the examples that we're rolling out initially are, of course, with generative AI, it's all around content creation. So we're rolling out email content creation, but in our early alphas and betas, we've had really positive results. I was reading a stat the other day, and it said the attention span in the United States is now to 8 seconds, I think, is the attention span. So it's really about helping our nonprofits, and this is not just nonprofits, but especially in nonprofits, really look at short, impactful, captivating messages for these micro moments that they need to create. So email generation, anything about content generation for grants is another opportunity that we're looking at and talking to in the early stages of discovery. But as far as like early results, it's very, very early as far as this technology being rolled out into nonprofit specific software.
And as you said, Gen AI holds potential, or so much potential, for content creation. That's where we hear most of the use cases. But if we dare to look beyond content, are there any other tasks within nonprofit management that you think it can revolutionize? And not just right here, right now, as you said, it's very early days. Anything in the future that you see around that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and when we think about content creation, it's when you look at some of the for-profit software companies, it will be very similar, but very verticalized to nonprofit specific use cases around content creation. But it's also about like content repurposing. So let's say I have created an email. I want to repurpose it for a social blog. I want to repurpose it for various grant applications. I want to make it longer. I want to make it shorter. I want to customize the voice. Lots of opportunities around content creation, but also around learning. So what we have done is we're starting to look at also ways to pipe in our best practices and our knowledge-based articles, not just on how to use our software, but best practices in the nonprofit world, of like how some best practice around donor retention or bringing back how to re-engage lapsed donors. So there's things like that. We also are looking at generating ideas for events, for their galas, for themes. So it is content related, but a lot of very specific use cases around, again, learning how to do something better is one that I'm super excited about, because especially when you're talking about small and medium-sized nonprofits, when you think about all the skills you need to do digital marketing well, then you add on top of that all the skills you need to run a nonprofit. They really need some help on doing these various skills. They may be very skilled in one area, but not in the other. So helping to give them creative ideas on that front, I think is just got a tremendous amount of opportunity in helping them do certain tasks. Again, another area we're looking at is harvesting the data. So not only creating the content, but harvesting data so that some people, they have relationships with donors for years, especially their mid and major donors. And so sometimes it's hard to harvest that data from their databases and put it into like a really succinct profile or recommended talk track or notes about that. So it's there's so many opportunities, really.
And I suspect that you have encountered certain elements of AI fatigue out there. So how do you address some of that skepticism around Gen AI, especially in the nonprofit sector, particularly among stakeholders who might be apprehensive about its integration? Anything around that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I would tell you that it is very interesting. So the largest conference in the nonprofit world is a conference called AFP Icon. In the last 2 years, the sentiment around AI has radically changed, which I was really excited to see, because in the conference in 2023, in April of 2023, there was a lot of, I would even say, fear. Like it was just a very much unknown. We don't really understand this technology. Is it like how do we make sure that it's ethical? How do we make sure that when you think about donors, a lot of donors want to be anonymous, or even if they're not anonymous to the organization, they don't want it getting out who they actually give to. And so making sure they're protecting their data, issues around security. So a lot of that was very coming from a place of fear, and it really changed this year. So at AFP Icon this year, and again, I just use that as an example where there's a lot of people gathering. There's a lot more excitement around it. I mean, there's still the need to be focused on security of data. So companies like Bloomerang, I think, taking a really strong stance, making sure that privacy and respecting the donor first, as always, top of mind is super important. But I do think that the overall sentiment is changing and the willingness to experiment, which I think is core. So they have to be open to experimenting. I think the other thing that is really essential in the way that we are choosing to approach this is having it really be an AI, we call it an AI empowered. So an AI empowered feature. So we're not trying to train nonprofits to be tech forward. We really are just trying to use AI to empower something they're already doing. So, for example, it doesn't do any. It may do dynamic segmentation, for example, but then the nonprofit has a choice of what to do with that. So it's really just automating out some very complex tasks, like again, bringing a lot of data together, that letting the platform do that on their behalf. Has lowered it's made it more approachable. So just making the feature more approachable in the context of how they're used to doing things, like creating, again, a campaign for the end of the year or preparing for an event. It's just you're going to see it, just the AI just come into various features where it can just help them do their job faster with better results.
Yeah, I echo everything you just said there. I went to a lot of tech conferences in the US and around the world last year. There was this certain fear of the unknown going on, but that has changed to excitement this year. And I've got to ask, though, I mean, when you're talking about the learning curve that comes with generative AI tools and having to get to grips with this technology almost in real time, what steps are you taking to maybe simplify these technologies for nonprofits and ensure everybody's comfortable using them?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that we're laser focused on. So one of the key tenets of what we focus on and we believe is important in talking to our customers is ease of use. And so again, this is about not pointing them to a lot of different AI technologies that are out there, but actually embedding it into the product and really focused on the UI design of the product itself. So that may seem obvious, but I think that there's a lot of tools out there that make it really hard to cleanse your data. So relying on nonprofits to do a lot of that on their own. So a lot of this is about making sure that data is integrated and that it's structured correctly so that they aren't having to do that, but also structuring the prompt. So with Gen AI, I'm sure, as you know, like the prompt structure is really critical. And rather than doing a lot of that free form, we're actually structuring it to help with that structuring of the prompt. So it's more in an interface that they're used to using, like giving them options on tonality of voice, for example, rather than relying on them to freeform the structure of their prompts. So it's very intentional in the way that we're thinking about incorporating AI and really focused on the UI design and the user experience in the way that it's incorporated into the product. And that really flattens out that learning curve, so they don't have to really understand all of those various issues that and skills you'd need to learn if you were using like a ChatGPT directly.
And if we were to zoom in on one crucial element for nonprofits there, in terms of donor and volunteer management, is there any area where generative AI can facilitate deeper engagement and more personalized experiences? I'm interested in how that evolved from that content creation to making a real difference in things like donor and volunteer management.
Yeah, there are many use cases. Let's take volunteer management, for example. There's a lot of, it's really kind of coupling, again, Gen AI and predictive AI together to do a very personalized experience. So what we're looking at is I'll call it personalized donor journeys. So especially when you look at the generational shifts in terms of how they like to give, how different generations behave in terms of their giving and their charitable engagement. Many times you're going to see, especially in like millennials, they may volunteer with an organization prior to actually giving. So it's really about using that AI to understand who potentially has volunteered, who hasn't given yet, and vice versa, and really trying to bring that together, marry that with the things they're interested in and preferences in terms of channel and preferences in terms of the kinds of volunteering, so that you're really able to suggest the volunteer opportunities that are the best fit for that particular person, for the impact that that constituent wants to make on the world. So it's really helping to really personalize the opportunities that we bring forth in terms of volunteer opportunities. We're just at the tip of the iceberg of what we can do with that. So it's really exciting, because I think it creates a richer experience for the volunteer, for the donor, as well as it brings the richer the experience, the more passionate they are about what they're doing, not only the mission, but the actual activity. The more engaged they're going to be, the more they're going to want to volunteer, and the more hours and dollars that the nonprofit will get to help their mission. So lots of exciting things there to work with.
As you said, there's so many exciting things to work with at the moment. Lots of excitement building this year. And of course, we are 7 months into 2024 already starting to have maybe one eye on 2025. So looking ahead, any developments in AI that you think might have a more significant impact on the nonprofit sector next year and beyond? And how are you preparing to leverage some of these innovations as you begin preparing for the months and years ahead?
Yeah. Well, I mean, two come to mind. One is just as video creation and some of when you get into kind of more live video, audio, those types of things, where it can be where we can bring that together, because video is just such an important aspect in terms of the way the consumers outside of nonprofit, but just consumers like to consume information. When you look at the success of YouTube and video, any kind of video-based content. So I think that's a real key area, is to help nonprofits create more compelling short videos to tell their story and to engage with their donors and their volunteers. I think that's one key area. The other area is really, again, we mentioned it earlier, but I think it's about bringing traditional predictive AI together with generative AI. So when you think about in a donor life cycle, when are they likely to be engaged with you and make their first gift? When they have volunteered but haven't given? When is the best opportunity? So the predictive is telling you more things like the key elements of the donor themselves, traditional machine learning. So predictions about who would give and when they would give and how much they would give. So it feels very personalized to that particular donor. And then the generative AI is really about creating that personalized, impactful content that's specific, that's marrying the different opportunities to give. Maybe you're passionate about giving coats to a drive. That's one of the things that I gave to you with a church that I support out of New York that I was really passionate about. So trying to bring those things to bear and opportunities to give or specific needs that the nonprofit has. So bringing those two things together, I think is a huge opportunity. It can be complex to do that well, but that's one area that we're really thinking about in terms of what we're planning for 25.
Wow, exciting times ahead. And I cannot thank you enough for donating your time today, sharing your insights around the intersection of AI and donor and volunteer management, as well as AI trainings within the workplace. So as a thank you, I'm going to see if there's something we can do for you now, because there is some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or maybe even listened to this podcast. So if I was to ask you, is there a person you'd love to have a private or breakfast or lunch with because he or she might just listen to this? Who would it be and why? I'm curious who you'd say here. Let's see what we can manifest together.
That's a really interesting question, Neil. I think I would have to say Brian Halligan, who was one of the founders at HubSpot. It's just so many things that he came out and I listened to a lot of his lessons learned, and he's very transparent. He had a motorcycle accident a few years ago, so he's not actively with HubSpot, but I think he'd be a really interesting person to talk to about he talks about taking an unconventional approach. Like with HubSpot, when they first started, now, HubSpot's obviously over 2 billion. It's a huge company, but when they started, he talks a lot about how a lot of their investors tried to get them to focus on the enterprise. Enterprises have more money. And he was really convicted that he really wanted to impact small and medium-sized for-profit companies, but they didn't have all the skills they needed. And so HubSpot really invested in learning and giving people the right information and knowledge to use their tools. And I think that's very similar to some of the challenges that we're focused on. And I just thought he was very, very deliberate and very convicted in what he wanted as he was growing that company. And I just think he would be a really interesting person to learn from.
Wow, what a great choice. And we have quite a few people from HubSpot that's been on the podcast. So I'm going to see if we can get a message out there. We'll send it out into the universe, see what we can make happen. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about Bloomerang, the work you're doing, maybe ask you or your team a question about how you're using generative AI. But where would you like to point everyone listening?
Well, obviously, we can point them to our website, www.bloomerang.com. We also have all kinds of webinars and best practices webinars that are open to all nonprofits, not just our customers, that anybody who's interested in learning, and a lot of them are also available for CFRE credits for those people who are certified fundraising executives. And so we welcome anybody who's interested in learning about Bloomerang to go to the website, and then you can see all the webinar schedules. We do at least one learning webinar a week, sometimes two. So it's quite a commitment to giving back to the nonprofit community. Again, it's open to anybody who's interested, not just our customers. So they're free for anybody who wants to join and learn more.
Awesome. Well, I will add links so people can find that nice and easily. And before you came on the podcast today, I was very conscious that AI has dominated large enterprise markets, but there's one aspect that is overlooked, and it is that use as a resource for small to medium non-profits. And I think that, especially because they don't have volume of assets that larger companies have, I think it's so important to shine a light on it. And you've done just that today. So many more questions, and I'd love to stay in touch with you, maybe get you on next year, seeing how your journey is continuing to evolve. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing that with me today.
Yeah, Neil, we'd be happy to. Again, we're just this whole sector is really just getting started with Gen AI, so we should have a lot of results to show on how that was actually able to impact the money and the volunteer hours and the raising more that we are trying to do for our nonprofit customers. We should have some really compelling stats to share with you next year on what the results were.
As we've heard from Tammy today, generative AI offers a wealth of possibilities for small to medium nonprofits. Whether it be streamlining content creation to personalising donor experiences, it's clear that while the journey may come with some challenges, the potential benefits far outweigh the initial hurdles. But what are your thoughts on the future of AI in the non-profit sector? Do you see it as a game changer for smaller organisations? I'd love to hear your insights on this. Please join the conversation. Share your insights on how you see AI possibly shaping the future of giving. So techblogwriter@outlook.com if you want to email me. If you follow me on the socials, yes, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. Don't just hit follow or connect. Send me a little message though. Let me know what you thought of today's conversation. But that's it for today. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, stay curious. Keep exploring this intersection of technology and impact and the future it could have on giving. And we can regroup tomorrow morning. But I've got to go now, so I will speak with you all again bright and early tomorrow. Bye for now.